Hello everyone, it has now been 1 week with this 2025 Jeep Wagoneer S, and let's go take us on a final drive, and I will give you all of my impressions over the course of this week. And I do have plenty because this vehicle is quite interesting. Getting in and out again is actually pretty easy. Nice big large door sills and openings, which is pretty nice. Getting in this cabin is also a really nice experience. I actually still like that we still have a push button. I know a lot of EV people like that we have you can just put in and put your brake on and it starts up, but I still actually like this button area over here. Vehicle starts up pretty easy. I haven't had any issues with startup over the course of this week. In here, again, everything's been actually quite solid. Driving position's pretty fine. You have a decent amount of visibility in here as well. Steering wheel's okay, but it does allow you to see your digital cluster pretty clearly. As I've mentioned, I think in the review, this haptic panel is just a little bit frustrating. This lower screen's actually been quite nice, especially for our wonderful massage functionality in the vehicle, and it pops up really easily to unlock all this space and just glides back down. The shifter is quite nice as well. It stops. I like how it stops on drive and park, so it doesn't just keep scrolling in a circle. It's metal. Sounds really nice as well, glows at night, but it does get hot in the sun, so keep that in mind. Drive mode selector and a few buttons here we'll get to in our driving experience here. Again, the screen's pretty good, Apple CarPlay, no issues. I will say the regen's a bit interesting, so we'll also touch on that in this drive as well, but let's hop off real quick, pop it into reverse. First thing here is I like that the mirrors can tilt down. This is a option in our settings here. Cameras are really crystal clear, I would say, overall in the vehicle, but I would just say getting to some of the camera views can be a process. Sometimes you'd have to go into this area, press vehicle, scroll through a menu to get some kind of camera views. You can favorite some, but I just wish this was a little bit of an easier process to navigate. Same thing with the parking assist. You have to hold it down the whole time, which I just think defeats the purpose of park assist at the end of the day. If you want to deactivate it, it gets a little bit funky sometimes. But let's head off and talk about the driving experience in this Wagoneer S. So on first notice, the thing you'll immediately notice is that it is very quiet in here. You're also going to notice you have the digital rear camera, which you can use or deactivate just really simply like that. But overall, it is pretty quiet in here. We have a lot of sound insulation, double pane glass, all that fun stuff. So it is pretty quiet in here, actually. I do like that about the vehicle. It does make it feel a little bit more luxurious. Coming to a stop, though, you're going to notice some interesting stuff. So depending on your regenerative braking settings here, we also have these really cool turning cameras here for both left and right indicators, which is pretty nice. So I do like that. You can disable that if you don't like it. The regen braking is a little bit funky, I will say. In minimum mode, I don't think it's aggressive enough, as some may say, and in max mode, it's I think too aggressive in some applications. So if we go over here, we're going to press electric vehicle right here. You see we have max and min. Max, it really does bring this vehicle to almost like a complete stop, but it doesn't fully stop the vehicle actually. So it kind of just slows you down really aggressively. It really comes on strong. In the minimum setting, it's a very light regen. Now you do have this ability to creep, so if you turn creep off and put it in max, it will come more to a complete stop than if not. But I actually like the creeping setting. It makes it feel a little bit more like a gas vehicle. Out here on smooth paved road, the suspension's actually pretty nice. It almost reminds me of the Lyriq in this aspect. It has this nice little glide to it actually, which is pretty nice. Now, I have read a lot of other reviews and stuff on this vehicle, and I did notice that over some smaller bumps, and specifically small like undulations and bumps on the road, it does kind of reverberate into the cabin just a little bit. It actually somehow does better over larger bumps. I think this has to do with the damping on the vehicle. It's a little bit stiffer than I would expect out of a more luxurious vehicle in this class, specifically the Cadillac Lyriq. So that's another thing I did notice on this all-new Wagoneer S. Overall, you know, it does let a little bit of some stuff into the cabin. You kind of feel like your head and whole body bobbing around sometimes. So it is a little bit stiffer than a Lyriq, but still has some nice comfortness on it. It really shines, I would say, on the highway with the suspension. Steering-wise, it's just it's just not there, and that's not what you really are expecting out of this vehicle. What is pretty impressive though is the acceleration. I leave it in auto mode most of the time, but it has 600 horsepower, guys. So even with the battery all the way down and around 23%, we still get pretty strong acceleration out of this vehicle. It does have some issues putting the power down, since both motors are putting out around the same 330-ish, 335 horsepower. So I think they could work a little bit on the management of the power between the front and rear. Steering itself is really, really light. Even with the sports steering on, there's practically no feel going on. We're gonna go over some bumps here. It actually handled that pretty well. It's just weirdly over the smaller bumps that you really get this jitter in the car that's a little bit unsettling here. And generally driving this vehicle, I think it's pretty fine. On the highway, and we're gonna experience this in a second right here, under load, under speed in a straight line, which I really was not expecting out of this car, is it kind of gets a little bit all over the place. It almost feels like the car is just like dancing a little bit. It doesn't feel like it's super stable in a straight line. That kind of concerned me a little bit. I have not really experienced that in too many vehicles, especially one with 600 horsepower. Just accelerating out here, it kind of feels like it's almost pulling over to the right a little bit, and you're on a little bit of some rougher pavement. It kind of feels like the car is just wobbling a little bit all over the place. So I would kind of like to see that improved a little bit, especially for a car with this much power. It is pretty quiet. There's really zero wind buffeting, which I think is quite nice. I think that's due to the aerodynamic efficiency of the car. And overall, I have noticed it coasts really well on the highway, which I do like about EVs. So we're just sitting on the highway, and it maintains its speed going downhill pretty well with very light regenerative braking. If I pop it into our eco mode, we get a little bit more boost of a range. Also have our adaptive driving system, which actually works pretty well. So adaptive cruise control is activated by this right switch on the button. I can turn on active driving assist and just set my speed, and voila, we are out on the highway with our active driving assistant on. It's not a full hands-free system. You do have to have some sort of touch on the steering wheel, and it is quiet on the highway and very smooth and comfortable. I think this excels really well as a road tripping highway vehicle. It's surprisingly efficient on the highway. This system works really well. It's really quiet, and with the massage, the ventilated seats, the heated seats, all of that works actually just well on the highway. So, and it's also not very off-road capable. It has around 6.4 inches of ground clearance. In sport mode, this thing melts its front tires to no avail, and so easily. It's honestly quite scary. It just spins and spins. All you hear is just tire screech up until around like 40-50 miles an hour. It's kind of crazy. It's just all that power is just going straight to the wheels. Really skinnier tires. I think they're just 235 width and square all around. So maybe a little bit more performance oriented tire would have been a little bit more suited for this amount of power in the vehicle. Now, I do also want to give you guys a little bit of a test of this Macintosh audio system in the all-new Jeep Wagoneer S. It's actually pretty decent. I'm going to play our typical test track we have. If you guys have any other recommendations for an audio test track that is a free, non-copyrighted sound, please drop that down in the comments section below. Always happy to test out some new sounds, but I'm going to turn on our active lane system just for a second so we can safely turn on our song. Press it here, and let's have a listen. I'll also open up our Macintosh visualizer we have in this vehicle. Let's crank up the audio. A little bit of a second to load. Okay, everyone, quick little audio test there. And as you know, on these channels, listening to audio through this microphone is always going to sound the same. But what I can tell you guys, if you can hear a little bit of differences, it's generally a pretty good audio system. It does lack a little bit of some substance. It does have a very surround spacey feel to it in pretty much every audio style I've listened to. And since most of the components in this vehicle, M5 V10, okay, I'm gonna call that out for y'all. Since most of all the components and all the speaker stuff is a lot of plastic, I have noticed some rattling when the bass kind of tunes up on some songs, so definitely keep that in mind. But pretty fine speaker system, nothing crazy outstanding, nothing bad though either, so that is nice to see in this Jeep Wagoneer S. So guys, to wrap up our final drive impressions of the vehicle, it's an interesting one, and I'm going to wrap it up here with our parking assistance system here. So I'm going to press our P on our dash right here, and I'm going to drive by some spaces. We're going to see how it does with the parking assistant here, and then we'll kind of wrap up our stuff here. So it seems to be able to find spots actually without a car next to it. Stop vehicle, clicking the space, I want to reverse into it, I would say. So it says we have to press and hold the brake pedal and then press and hold the active park sense button for our entire maneuver. So let's press and hold our park sense button, take my foot off the brake. Now this is honestly the only vehicle I've ever experienced that makes you hold down a button the entire automatic parking engagement system here. So this is interesting. I do like though how it's finding spaces without a car next to it. A lot of the more advanced systems that don't have to have you hold a button typically need to have a car in a space for it to kind of see, and then kind of parks next to it. So I guess that's kind of cool that it can do that, but I don't like holding the button the whole time. I think just being aware of your surroundings a little bit more, maybe modulating the gas and the brake might have been a smarter solution here, but it did do it relatively quickly and without a car next to it. So I'm going to give it some props there, and it puts us into park. But to wrap up the week with the vehicle, it's interesting. This interior actually is a really strong highlight. It's a lot of great stuff going on here. Like I mentioned, the massage is just fantastic, but it's so early on in this both platform and vehicle's lifespans that I think there's a lot more still to come. So I am hopeful there. I hope they're hearing all this feedback and can make these changes, because they have a good foundation, and I think it's just going to get better hopefully down the road. As always, guys, thank you for joining me on yet another review over at Allcarnews, and make sure to like, subscribe, and comment, and stay tuned for more coming soon. Cheers.